Hi folks, I want to apologize right off the bat about the incendiary clickbait nature of the title on this video, but it's a very important topic and I'm going to get right to the point because I know not everyone watches these videos all the way through, and the point is simply this: recapping is not repair. Alright? Look, it says so right here. If you have a unit that has a problem, you need to fix it first. I have seen far too many cases, read about far too many cases on the audio forum I'm a member of people who had a unit, wasn't working, some function, maybe one channel in an amplifier wasn't working, and they recapped it. And it's still not working. And that's the best case scenario, because there have been too many cases where something wasn't working, it was recapped, and now it blows the fuse, it smokes, it does things it didn't do before, and the problem is even worse. And now whatever initial trouble you had has been compounded. Who knows where the problem is now? Now, there are valid reasons to recap equipment. Electrolytic capacitors don't last forever. They last longer than a lot of people think, but they are one of the few electronic components that does have a shelf life. They are going to crap out someday. And the reason electrolytic capacitors, and they're the ones we're focusing on because they're the only ones that really have a shelf date, the reason they fail is they are manufactured with an electrolytic paste. And as the paste dries out, the capacitor will lose value, go up in ESR, which is the equivalent series of resistance. Essentially, it's just going south and it's nearing end of life if it's not already there. Now, a lot of equipment that was built in the 70s that I have recapped, I'll spot check them on the way, and vast majority of those capacitors still measure good. Now, I'm not measuring every parameter. Most of the capacitor testers out there don't test for leakage, but for the most part, most of the caps I check are still good. When you start getting into stuff from the 60s, you're just going to have to recap it. They're bad. I think the manufacturing process got better in the 70s. But yeah, if stuff's in the 60s, just do it. The thing is, you have to be very methodical when you recap something. You have to make sure you're observing the correct orientation. You have to make sure to test after doing each small section of a board or after each module that you do, because if you introduce a problem and you know it was on the last thing you did, it really greatly diminishes the amount of time it's going to take to find it and increases your chances of success. Now, here's the thing. I don't want to discourage anybody from working on your own stuff. It's a wonderful hobby. I love doing this. I did go to school. I went to a night school, nothing fancy, don't have a 4-year degree, don't even have a high school education, but I did go to a vocational school 2 nights a week for 1.5 years. And when I got out, I can guarantee you I had good grasp on theory, but I still didn't know anything. I started picking up TVs on the side of the road back when CRT televisions ruled the land, and I worked on those. And I'm glad I did that because, let me tell you, my first few patients did not fare that well. So this is why we do that. And like I always say, this is why surgeons practice on cadavers. You don't want to learn on a living patient. So, you recap something, best case scenario, unit works, sounds better. Well, unless it's a dramatic change in sound quality, it may just be confirmation bias. That's a phenomenon where we spent, $50, $75, $100 on capacitors, untold hours putting them in. We expect to hear a marked difference. It may not be the case. That's where having test equipment to quantify any changes comes into play. But I felt compelled to make this video because, as I said, the audio forum I'm a member of has just untold threads of people who had a working unit until they decided to recap it. And there was a member there who aggregated all these different cases. I mean, there's 3 pages. Just finished recapping. One of the 220 ohm white resistors near the electric plug started smoking. Fairly new to this whole thing, took the dive, recapped my SA 9800, now allowed buzzing sound or hum, it's coming from both channels. I have recapped the power supply board, both left and right amplifier boards. After completing the board, I went to power up and smelled burning capacitor, followed by a little smoke. Let's see. I just got done recapping my C28. The hum that was present before recapping is still there. Fix it first. I can't stress this strongly enough. Just finished complete recap of my SX780. A few minutes later, R259 smoked again. You didn't fix the problem. And it just goes on and on and on. Now, electrolytic capacitors will fail from heat because that accelerates the drying out of the electrolytic paste. If you're stored it somewhere, if it's out in a hot garage, in a shed, that will accelerate the demise of these caps. Certain manufacturers use cheap capacitors and they will fail a lot sooner than some of the older Marantz, Sansui, whatnot. NAD, famous for this. I have found so many bad capacitors. I don't know if they were bad runs, just cheap, whatever. But if you remember that NAD, I think it was a C370 that I had, 373. Like I said, I think I'm blocking that one. But yeah, that one, that was the whole problem with that. That's why it kept blowing up. So in short, I just wanted to make this video. I don't want to discourage anybody, but here's the problem. As careful as you can be, we're human. We make mistakes. You've seen me make mistakes. The difference is I can usually find the cause of my mistake and repair it. But if you're just blindly replacing capacitors because you're hoping it'll fix a problem, and you introduce a new problem, you're in real trouble. And if you had a working unit before you started, you're really going to feel bad. So if you do want to do this kind of work, and I encourage everybody to learn about this and do it, don't practice on your good stuff. Do what I did. Pick something up off the side of the road, something for $5 at Goodwill. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Hone your soldering skills, your desoldering skills. Learn to locate components. There's a lot of learning that you really should do before you tackle something like this. So, in short, the main message I wanted to get across is if you have a problem, get to the root of the problem. Just don't blindly recap it and hope it'll fix it, because chances are it won't, and there's also a chance you might make it worse. Okay? I just had to get that off my chest. I'll shut up now. And as always, I like giving back to the community that's given me so much. Rant off. Later.